Hello, welcome to Redemption. This is one of the latest starter decks from the set titled Israel's Deliverance. This starter deck is the K starter deck. The other starter deck in the set is the L starter deck. So, if you are watching this video and you're new to Redemption, welcome. And then, if you are opening up your cards, opening up your starter deck, and kind of seeing how they play, or you have some questions, we're going to go over the K deck, and I'll do another video for the L deck as well, and then we'll also go into more of building onto your deck and adding more cards to it as you learn the game and get access to more cards. So here we're going to go over each card in the set and the abilities, kind of run through how the deck is designed. Um, I I was on the design team to design this, so pretty familiar with the cards. And what we wanted to do was make sure that when players were learning to play, that they were having fun and that they can go back and forth playing enhancements on their characters. So before I get too involved, I'm going to go through what each card is and each card type. So you'll see that each card will have different colors, and we call these colors brigades. And we match the border of the card to its brigade. So it's really quick and easy to look at your card and know what brigade it is, because it'll match your brigade of the card with your outline. Now that's relatively new, so you'll see other cards that don't have a matching border, but you'll see that on newer cards. So first, the point of the game is to rescue lost souls. So Redemption has been around since 1994, and the creator of the game wanted an alternative to other card games that were out there that had a Christian approach. And so the premise of the game is to rescue lost souls, and then we use this through heroes. So heroes are going to be what you go into battle with, and you get blocked by evil characters. So for a hero, you can tell what type of card is going to be your icon box, and it'll have your attributes. This will be your strength and your toughness. The 4 will be your strength, toughness will be the 6. You can remember this as offense or defense if you like. And then the actual cross is indicative of the card being a hero. And we'll get into multiple icons here shortly. Just now we'll stick to just a hero. Then the title of the card. And then I guess I could use it up here. The title of the card. And then this is the identifier. So you'll see if there's no text needed in the identifier. It's just the card doesn't have any identifying characteristics that need to be additionally defined. So you'll see Gad is a prophet, and if we look at an Egyptian, it'll say generic and Egyptian, and then you'll see other that'll just say an Egyptian king, a lot of generic Egyptians, a magician. So if there's attributes about the card that matter from a gameplay perspective and you wouldn't necessarily know, we like to put it in the actual identifier, and then later on in the game you'll see that you can ban to a prophet, and then you'll know, well, how do I know it's a prophet? Well, it says right in the identifier box. This is the ability and scripture box, and we differentiate the two based on different text font, and then we also have a gradient background for the scripture, and then we have the actual ability. So from a starter deck, we mostly kept very simple abilities. You won't see a lot of text on cards. We do have one example of more text where you're at 4 lines of an ability, but for the most part it's very much just 2 lines of text, and you'll see 3 here, and that's the ability. And then you'll see everything's numbered and there are 50 cards in the deck, and there is a 6-card reserve, and we'll talk about what the reserve is later on. So you'll have 50 cards in the main deck, and they'll be numbered K1 through 50, and then K51 through 56, and it says reserve. So when you are done playing, if you want to put these 6 cards back in your reserve, you'll know which ones they are by simply looking down at the bottom and seeing where it says reserve. And you can put them back in there. Or you can mix and match. You can move around some cards from the reserve to the main deck. It's your deck. You can do whatever you want. You can move them all to the main deck. So every 7 cards in your deck, if you get more cards and you want to add to it, every 7 cards in your deck needs to be a lost soul. So if you add 6 cards and you want to add another, you have to add a lost soul. And after that, you can add 6 more, and then you have to add a lost soul. So every time you're adding 7, one of those has to be a lost soul. And that way, since the goal is to play to 5, and when a lost soul is rescued, it's become a redeemed soul. And so when a lost soul is rescued, that'll be a point for you. You play to 5 points, and this, to keep every 7 card being a lost soul, is to really try to help that your opponent always has something to rescue, to where it kind of keeps the ratios fair in the deck. So these are our heroes, and they'll each have abilities. So may band to a generic warrior. Now heroes band to heroes. Heroes do not band to evil characters. They are opposed by evil characters. So if Gad can band to a generic warrior, or you may draw one. So if you don't have anyone to band to, or you don't want to, you just want to draw a card, you can do that. Banding to a generic warrior. So what is a generic warrior? Now we saw the term generic in the identifier, and you'll see the term generic right here. And then if it's a warrior, somewhat intuitive, but there is a weapon, there's a shield, and we call that warrior class or weapon class. So if they are warrior class, they are a character that's warrior. So this is a warrior. That's a warrior. And if an enhancement is weapon class, that means it has the other piece of the shield. And we'll get into weapons in a little bit. But this character, David's Messengers, is a generic warrior. So Gad can band to a generic warrior. He can band to David's Messengers. So if we look at our others, and we look at the identifier Jonathan, Abiathar, Abishai, Abigail, none of them say generic in it. And generic just means it could be a group of people without a name. Now sometimes we'll put the in front of a group of people to where we don't necessarily want that card to be generic, because it could have a really strong ability and could be a little bit more complicated. But there's only one generic warrior in the deck, and then there's one in the reserve as well. So if you think, hey, I don't really have enough generic warriors for Gad, then you can bring in David's Spies into your deck and have another target for Gad to band to. Procession of Prophets. You may take a good Old Testament OT card from reserve, or draw one. So yes, you will have to know what's Old Testament, what's New Testament. I used to not know this when I was younger. I played the game for a long time, and even though I'm a Christian and I have was always raised with devotionals and Bible studies, I still didn't know what books were New Testament, Old Testament all the time. Like I would get Chronicles and Corinthians confused. So sometimes you'll just have to look it up, but it really has helped me over the years just know or start remembering what books are in what testament. That could be confusing for new players or younger players. So sometimes you will have to look it up if you're not playing in like a sanctioned tournament with a judge, or if your opponent doesn't know, and you can just ask them. If they know it, they can tell you. But for this purpose in the deck, all your cards for offense are going to be from mainly from First Samuel, and then all your cards in defense are from Exodus. And then the opposing starter deck, the L deck, that's going to be Moses and Aaron and all Exodus heroes. And the defense is all characters from First Samuel. They're all Philistines. So it's Aaron and Moses against Pharaoh and his army. And then it's it's David and prophets around First Samuel and characters in First Samuel that helped or aided or befriended David. So that was the premise of the deck when we designed it. And then Goliath is in the other deck. So they kind of go up against their big villains. So Procession of Prophets can take a good Old Testament card from reserve. So when you're taking, you got to look at what you can take. It's got to be a good card, and it's got to be Old Testament from reserve. So you can take anything here from your reserve that's good. And if you're unsure if it's good or bad, you can see dragons and skulls are bad, and Bibles and crosses are good. And we can go into what these icons are shortly. Company of Prophets, you may play a Lost Soul from a deck or draw one. Sometimes in other competitive games, you could have Lost Souls that benefit you for having them down in your territory. So you would want to play a Lost Soul from your own deck. Usually, you're going to want to play a Lost Soul from your opponent's deck, and that's called Soul Generation, where you're generating a Lost Soul. So if there is no Lost Soul to rescue, you can make a rescue attempt with Company of Prophets, and still you can essentially playing a Lost Soul from the deck. You'd be able to search for their deck and put one in their land of bondage. And if you don't want to do that, or they already have Lost Souls out there, you can just draw one. And then the Prophet of God, we've already seen you may ban to a generic warrior. This prophet can ban to a generic prophet, or you may draw two. So if we look at our prophets, we have a generic prophet and a generic prophet here. So the Prophet of God can ban to these two heroes, or you can draw two. And then Samuel the Anointer, you may underdeck a good 1 Samuel enhancement from discard pile or reserve. So what he can do is any of your 1 Samuel enhancements that are good, now this has two icons, but it still can be targeted as good. So any of your good 1 Samuel enhancements, and if we look at them, the scriptures down here, and once again for this starter deck, all good cards are from 1 Samuel. He can target any enhancement. So we have crosses are our heroes, and our Bibles are the enhancements. He can target any enhancement, and he can underdeck it, which literally means you take it from your discard pile and you put it underneath your deck. And that way you can eventually get back to it, or he's really good later on in the game, or if you need one of your really strong enhancements, you can put it back underneath. Hannah, you may look at opponent's hand, and then you may withdraw this hero. Sometimes you just want to know what's the best way to block, or if you see like a Pharaoh out in territory, and you think, you know what, I probably can't get through that Pharaoh or those evil characters in their territory, but I still want to look at their hand and kind of see what they have and what they can attack me with. You can attack with Hannah, look at their hand, and then withdraw her. And then we have our purple brigade. So green, the brigades mean something in Redemption. Green is indicative of prophecy. Purple are like royalties and leaders. For this starter deck, we wanted to make sure everything was either green or purple. So David's Messengers. Once again, you may play a Lost Soul from a deck or draw one. So making sure that that your opponent has a Lost Soul out is very important. And if they, like I said, they already do, it's always nice to draw one. And then may ban to a purple 1 Samuel hero, or you may draw two. So purple, all 5 purple brigade heroes. So if you band, you got to see, are they purple brigade? And then we see our icon box, the brigades in the back. Or you may draw 2. So it's purple first Samuel hero. We know they're all first Samuel in here. And we just, once again, we remember to look in our scripture area. And then Abiathar, you may look at a hand or take a good Old Testament card from reserve. And you might be saying, well, you just said Purple Brigade, they were leaders or like royalty. Abiathar could be considered a leader because he's a high priest. For the starter deck, sometimes we went outside of the rule for brigades to bring them in to make sure it still worked for the overall starter deck, so there's enough heroes. So you may look at a hand or take a good Old Testament card from reserve. So he can just come in and take what you want from your reserve. And then you have Abishai. You may exchange this card with a first Samuel hero from reserve or discard pile. So he's really nice. He's got big numbers. His attributes, remember, strength and toughness are his numbers on the card. So he's got big numbers, and then he could either exchange himself if you lost, like if David was discarded and you want to get your David back, he can exchange him from your discard pile. Or if you want to attack with Abishai and go out and get your David spies, then that's another thing that you can do with Abishai. And then you have Abigail that takes a good first Samuel enhancement from deck, so she can go right to your deck and she can search for a good first Samuel enhancement. Once again, we know enhancements are Bible icons, and she can put it into your hand. Then going into the Green Brigade enhancements, we can negate an evil card. So negating means, because everything else has been kind of intuitive, banding means you can band together, you can bring one with the other. So you can, an example of this would be Gad comes into battle, and you can band to a generic warrior, and you now activate David's messenger's ability. And abilities tend to activate in battle unless they say otherwise, or they're different types of cards. For characters and enhancements, characters being crosses and dragons, so these are evil characters, these are heroes. So characters and their enhancements activate in battle. You can't play a purple brigade card on a green brigade, so you have to match the brigade in order to play it. If you have heroes banded, you can play purple or green in battle. So then going into negate, negate an evil card, you would have to choose any evil card that's out in play to negate. Now there's negating, interrupting, and preventing. For the starter deck, we only chose to use the word negate to not get too confusing to players. Negating essentially means you interrupt a card, you currently stop what it's doing, and you prevent it from activating. So if you negate an evil card, you essentially pause its ability and then just say it doesn't work. Like that's what you're doing. You're negating the ability. The ability is no longer going to activate. So negate an evil card, what this would look like if the opponent discarded you. So the opponent is discarding all heroes in battle, and you want to negate that. And if you don't negate it, then all your heroes in battle are going to the discard pile. So you would have to negate the evil card played, and then for this card, the opponent must then top deck an evil card from hand. For Samuel's Edict, simply just says discard an evil card. So any evil card out, you can target to discard it. And then if you're discarding the evil character in battle, then the evil character, the opponent, can then play a negate. David's music, shuffle all evil characters in battle. So far no confusing like keywords or anything like I had to explain negate. Other than that, discard means a card goes to the discard pile. Shuffle all evil characters in battle. Shuffle means they go to your deck. They don't get shuffled into your hand unless it said shuffle all evil characters in battle to their hand. It would have to be written differently. And then consecration, negate and discard an evil enhancement, and then you may draw one. This would interrupt what the opponent just played in battle. It would prevent it, so it's not going to activate. And then you get to draw one. Now you'll see each enhancement has the numbers on them, the strength and the toughness. So what you do is you'll add up the numbers. And so we'll talk about initiative real quick. If I come into battle with Gad and I don't band, or I choose not to, or I just drew one card instead, and the opponent blocks with the Murdering Pharaoh, I am a 4-6 and they are an 11-10. Now remember I said this could be looked at like offense and defense. So my strength, my offense is 4. That would be compared to his 10. And his strength, 11, would be compared to my 6. Now don't think about it as subtraction. So I'm not a negative, like it's not 11-10 minus 4-6. Instead, so like his 11 isn't going to hit my 6, and I'm not going to be a minus 5. Instead, I'm looking at how much do I need to where my strength is higher than his defense, or his defense, and I say his because I'm looking at Murdering Pharaoh. His offense is 11, so I need to get more than 5 toughness in order to live. So let's say the first card I play is You Will Be Well, and we would add the numbers. So we would first do the ability, so we can negate an evil card. So I could negate Murdering Pharaoh, and whatever my opponent took, if they took an evil card from their reserve, and it doesn't say the word a reserve. If it said you may take an evil Old Testament card from a reserve, they can decide to take an evil Old Testament card from your reserve or from theirs. Since it doesn't say the word a, it defines the player who played the card as their reserve. Sometimes we use shorthand to give a space on a card, so it can be a little confusing, but the words a or their can be very important little words to key in on. That's what we saw. An example would be you may play a Lost Soul from a deck, so I can play it from my opponent's or mine. So going back to You Will Be Well, we want to negate an evil card. We can negate what they did, and if they took an evil Old Testament card from their reserve, they would have to put that card back, and then they would have to top deck an evil card from hand, and then I would apply the numbers. So we would see a 4 plus a 5 is a 9, and a 6 plus a 2 is an 8. So I'd be a 9-8. My 9 is not hitting their 10, like it's not higher than their 10, and my 8 is not high enough to block their 11. If I had nothing else to play, my opponent wouldn't even get a chance to play an enhancement because they don't have initiative. Right now I still have initiative. And then since my numbers are not high enough, I would be losing by numbers. And if I have nothing else to play in the Green Brigade, then I would die and go to the discard pile. Now, if I did have something else to play, and I played Consecration, I could negate and discard an evil enhancement. And if there's none out there to discard, then that's okay. There's no target. And then I can draw one. But now I look at my numbers, and I'm a 5 plus a 5 plus a 4. So I'm a 14. Then I'm a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm a 14, 10. Well, now my 14 is higher than his 10, but his 11 is still enough to get through my toughness. So his strength is still higher than my toughness. It would now be my opponent's initiative to play an enhancement, and they can play any enhancement if they want. If they don't have one, they can choose the pass. And right now, this 11 is high enough to kill Gad, and whoever is controlling Gad would have to play an enhancement, or they would both die. And if they both die, it'd be mutual destruction, and the murdering pharaoh and Gad would both go to their discard pile. But in the case of a mutual destruction, the opponent still has to relinquish a redeemed lost soul. So you still get a point in a mutual destruction. However, if their numbers were, let's say the numbers were higher than 11, but their strength wasn't killing the murdering pharaoh, then it would be called a stalemate, and no lost soul would be relinquished. So in a stalemate, the character still blocks. So that's a little bit about initiative. And then we go into given to Israel, and we get to negate an evil enhancement, and then we can discard all evil enhancements in battle. Now, just because you discard something doesn't mean you negate the ability. So I can still discard all the enhancements in battle, and all the effects, they'd still work. So I'd have to negate. If there's only one enhancement in battle, I can negate it and then discard it. If there's more than one, anything that's already been played that I don't negate, it'll still work. Now, David's victory, that'll underdeck all evil characters in battle. We've already explained underdeck. It literally means you put the cards that are targeted underneath the deck. So face down underneath your deck, or under the owner's deck. So in this case, if I play David's victory on my hero, and it's these two characters, they banned to an Egyptian, and they banned, and I underdeck all evil characters in battle, these two characters would go underneath the owner's deck. So whoever owns these cards, they'd go under their deck. Bravery of David, you made top deck, so just the opposite of underdeck. You made top deck a good 1 Samuel enhancement from deck or reserve. So you'll notice a new icon here, and it looks like it's a small, like land kind of looking icon. If you look in there, it's like kind of trees on a beach. The icon's called Territory Class, and this means you can play this card. Normally you have to play an enhancement on a hero in battle. You can play this card outside of battle as long as you have a hero in territory, and the ability would activate. Now, and you'll see more icons in the game. You will see characters with that icon too. That simply means their ability also activates in territory, or whenever they're put down. So from here, this card is nice. You can play it outside of battle, and you can get a very strong enhancement on the top of your deck from your reserve, knowing you have like a draw one hero. Or you can play it in battle, and you get those really big 7-0 numbers applied to your hero, and you still get the benefits of the card. Same icon here. You may play a lost soul and an evil character from an opponent's deck. So from this, you can once again play this in battle or outside of battle, and this can play a Lost Soul from their deck, so you can play this before you attack if there's no Lost Soul out, but you also have to play an evil character from their deck as well. And then of course we have David, and David is what's called Dual Brigade, and he has the ability to play both Purple Brigade and Green Brigade enhancements, which is very strong. And he is warrior class, and then we can see his identifier. He's a king of Israel and Judah. He is a musician and a prophet, and he has really, he's got high strength, high toughness, and just a very good ability overall. So he gets to negate an evil card, and then he gets to draw one. And then we'll also see we have a Dual Brigade enhancement. So that means we can play this enhancement on any purple hero or any green hero. And then the opponent must underdeck an evil card from hand, and then you get to bounce an evil character. Now bounce is a key word in Redemption, and that means return to hand. So whoever the owner of the card is, so if I bounce an evil character and it's my opponent's evil character, it goes back to their hand. So bounce just means return to hand. And then we have two icons here. So this means I can play this card on a hero, and it's Dual Brigade, so I can play it on a Purple Brigade hero or a Green Brigade hero. Or I can play this card on any Pale Green Brigade. I can play this card on any Pale Green Brigade character in battle as well. So it's really strong. It's negate a card, so you can just pick whatever you want to negate, and you can play it on any of your characters in your deck. So even though it's just a negate, it's very strong. And remember I talked about mutual destruction. So if your numbers are high enough to kill the evil character in battle, but the hero is also dying, you still get a Lost Soul. So that's why we made this a 4-0. And then a stalemate does not give up a Lost Soul if you're blocking. And this is an 0-4, so it should help the defense in a stalemate position. So now we have Abusive Taskmaster, a generic Egyptian, and you get to choose, you get to negate a hero, and then you can top deck an evil card from reserve, and that's any evil card. Now, one scenario you might see is David gets to negate an evil card, and David comes into the battle, and he'll negate Abusive Taskmaster. If you choose to negate Abusive Taskmaster, if Abusive Taskmaster comes into battle, you can't come in and then negate David. Your ability is negated and is not going to work. So if David negates an evil card in territory, it's not going to activate in battle. And the Egyptian Soothsayers, you can underdeck an evil Exodus enhancement from discard pile, very much like Samuel. So any evil Exodus enhancement goes underneath your deck if you want to. Protect this character from lone heroes. So protection means regardless of what the numbers are, this character will not die. So even if your numbers in battle become a 20/20, this character will still live. Now, in order to target a protected character, you have to negate their ability. And you'll see in other sets of Redemption, we have what's called regardless of protect. And that means even if a card is protected, you can still target it regardless of the protection. So think about it as protection is a shield, and you can't even target them. So that's why you'll have, so if I played underdeck all evil characters in battle, and I'm opposed by Pharaoh, he would not go under deck. You would have to negate his ability, so either negate a card or negate an evil card, and then you would have to target him. And then Pharaoh gets to look at your hand. So for Murdering Pharaoh, it's warrior class, and that means I can put this weapon, if it's my turn, in territory. If I want to, I can what's called equip this weapon to any warrior class character. And when they come into battle with their weapon, I can choose to activate the weapon's ability or not. But I have to choose it when they enter battle. And then if I do, I can discard this card to discard a hero. So those are weapons. And then Gathering Soothsayers, Egyptian, may ban to up to 3 OT Egyptians. So that means your Egyptian in battle may bring into battle up to 3 Old Testament Egyptians. There's not very many New Testament Egyptians, but there are. I know of one in the game. This is just simply saying that they have to be Old Testament, though. We do like reaffirming like Scripture and to where people kind of see Old Testament, New Testament. And then we have another territory class enhancement. You may top deck an evil card from reserve, or you can underdeck a hero. So I can play this outside of battle, and you're limited to 1 territory class enhancement per turn. So I can play this card outside of battle and underdeck their hero. So if they have a hero that's really strong, that's been really beating up my evil characters, I can underdeck them and not even have to play this in battle. Then we have the strongest card in the game, Son of God. This negates and rescues a lost soul. This means that you can negate the ability of a lost soul and then rescue that lost soul. So, if rescued, you may draw 1. If I place Son of God on my opponent's lost soul, and it has this ability, I can negate that ability and then rescue it, which means my opponent does not get to draw 1. In Dominance, I can play at any time. If it's not my turn, I have to ask my opponent, can I play a Dominant? And as long as they don't want to play a Dominant, they say yes, and you can play a Dominant. And you can play as many Dominants as you want at that point, if you're going to play multiple Dominants. As soon as it's the opponent, as soon as they can do something else, meaning they can play an enhancement or whatever the scenario may be, you would have to ask for permission to play Dominance again. And that's because they're the strongest. We want to make sure the player that is on their turn has the advantage, but it's also to where it's not like a slapjack, to where you kind of ask, hey, can I play this? Yep. So Old Testament human may ban to up to 3 1 Samuel heroes. So this allows your dominant, you can play this, and if you banned, you only banned in battle. So if you play this card outside of battle, you can play dominance whenever you want. So if you play this card outside of battle, it won't do anything because banding only works in battle. So that was to help let people know that you can play dominant outside of battle, but you very much need to know what the ability is. And then Murderous Command, one of my favorites. You may take an evil Egyptian from deck or reserve, and then you get to discard, and you don't get a may here. You'll see a lot of cards say may, you may discard. This is not a may. You have to discard a hero in a territory, and then you get to add an evil Egyptian to battle. Add and banding, you can look at it like it's the same thing from a more complicated perspective later on in the game. They do have different definitions, but this very much is a band ability to where you get to bring in an evil Egyptian to battle. So it's really nice. You get to search your deck or reserve for an evil Egyptian. You then get to discard their hero in a territory, and then you get to add your Egyptian to battle. This does not need an Egyptian to be in battle since it's adding. Now remember, with banding, we very much needed a character in battle because a character gets to band. Since it's an add, you can just put an additional character into battle. That's not a band, so you do not need a character in battle in order for this to work. Lord of Armies, You must have an Old Testament human in battle in order to band Murderous Command. You do not need a character in battle. And then we have Lost Souls. And then we have another keyword, Meek. And the ability is on any time you'll see Meek, it'll always have parentheses, has no special ability. And that literally means this is not there's no special ability. So even though it says Meek, Meek is not a special ability. It just lets you know this has no special ability. So you could pretty much not put anything there. There could just be no text, and that would still mean Meek. So we have three Meeks, and then we have 4 special ability Lost Souls. Now, any card could have a Meek. So characters, enhancements, it can say Meek, and there's no ability. So you would play it in battle. If it's an enhancement, it wouldn't do anything. When a Lost Soul is drawn, you immediately put it down and you draw 1 more card. And when a Lost Soul comes into play, or when it gets put in territory, it'll activate. So if put in play pretty much means when you draw it, you put it in your territory. It's called if put in play because maybe your opponent puts it in play. Sometimes you'll see a Lost Soul that'll say if drawn, and these all say if rescued or if put in play. Sometimes a Lost Soul will say if drawn, and that means you have to draw the Lost Soul. Remember, we have cards that say you may play a Lost Soul from a deck. So if put in play, you may exchange a card from hand with an Evil Egyptian from deck. So any card in your hand, you can swap it out for an Evil Egyptian in your deck, and then you always have to shuffle after a search. And then if put in play, you may look at opponent's hand or reserve. It's always nice to see what they have in their hand, especially since it'll be your turn, and you'll get to kind of look at their hand and then make educated guess based on how the attack's going to go. And if put in play, you may underdeck a card from hand to draw 1. So pretty much your card that you don't need in your hand or your least valuable, you can underdeck that and still get to draw 1. And then if rescued, so if your opponent rescues this Lost Soul, you get to draw 1. And then another one of my favorite cards, if put in play. So this is a fortress, and older fortresses will have a different color scheme behind them, and it'll look like Rainbow Brigade, which means all brigades. A fortress doesn't have brigades, so we changed this recently to where it makes more sense. But this is the background of a fortress, and based on the set, like your fortresses will have a different border. So even though I said earlier, your border means the brigade. If a card doesn't have a brigade, it can have a different color border. So this is David's tent, and when you put a fortress down, it has an ongoing ability. In this case, this has an instant ability. If put in play, so that means as soon as you put it down, you may take a 1 Samuel hero from deck or reserve. So I can take any hero from my deck. And then if you're alone, 1 Samuel hero attacks, you may draw 1. Lone means if you don't band. So remember, Gad bans. If you choose not to band with David's tent out, that would be a lone 1 Samuel hero, and you would get to draw 1. Which is really nice because you can start stacking Prophet of God as a lone hero, and you get a draw 2, and then you would be able to get a draw 1. And that's really good. And then we have David's harp. And if an opponent uses a good or evil draw ability, you may draw 1. Now this is an artifact. And an artifact can be activated, meaning it's face up, and you can have 1 artifact face up per turn. And then each turn you can decide if you want to face down that artifact, deactivate it, and activate a different artifact. Or you just want to maybe deactivate the artifact in general. But you can have 1 artifact active unless a card says it can hold or have another artifact active in the card or on top of the card. Like you'll see fortresses sometimes will say holds a type of artifact, and that's where we will use our identifiers. So if a card says it can hold an artifact that involves music, that means you can have David's Harp active in another location as well as your artifact pile and still get to have, so you would have 2 artifacts at that point. So that'll pretty much show the, well, we'll talk about the reserve real quick. Pretty intuitive. You may look at the top 3 cards of the deck. You get to take up to 1 and the rest go to the bottom. You can negate an evil card, and then your hero may ban to an Old Testament hero, and this is another really good one. A lot of times if I'm playing these decks, I like to bring this card into my deck and not leave it in my reserve. Same with this card because they're dual brigade. Negate. This is called a covenant, and a covenant means it's an enhancement and an artifact. If I want to, I can activate this card, and it would have and you can see the icon here. And if I use it as an artifact, it would be in my artifact slot. And you may underdeck a 1 Samuel hero from discard pile or reserve. Or if it's in my hand and I want to use it as an enhancement, then I'd be able to negate and discard an evil card. This is a special character. This is a evil character with no special ability, so it is a meek evil character. Then this is another very good card. You can negate a good enhancement and you get to draw 2. And since it's a weapon, you can equip it. And every time that character comes into battle, you get to draw 2 and you get to negate a good enhancement. And then this is called a curse because it is an evil enhancement and an artifact. So we have covenants and curses. And curses are the same thing as covenants, just for evil. Negate and discard a good card, so I can use this ability as an enhancement, an evil enhancement, or I can activate this card and I can activate it as an artifact. So that's all the abilities in the K deck. Now the L deck is the exact same. We mirrored the abilities. So the titles and the brigades will be different, but all the exact ratios and all the exact abilities are the same in the L deck. Now I'll do a quick layout on, now also I'm using what's called Lackey. This is an online tool where we can go, you can see it says server, and I can literally connect to a server and I can play people on Lackey. And then I have deck editor. So I have if you're like, well, I'm new to the game, maybe I don't want to just start investing, even though I might like the game, I don't know what to buy. You have every single card in the game right here, and you can filter it out as well. You can type in the name, you can say what the name contains. So if I want to, I can look for the set and I can say whether it contains or it doesn't contain or it begins with, whatever I want to do. I can start putting in filters here. So I use Lackey all the time, and it stores decks, so it'll have your most recent, or you can just hit browse, and these are all the decks I've made on this file. So it's pretty easy to install. It's a zip folder. You just unzip it and pretty much good to go. So I very much recommend Lackey. It's great for building decks and kind of getting to learn the game. So what I can do is I can just hit a new game and kind of quote unquote play against myself. What I do is I can draw. Now when we start the game, we draw 8. And then you either usually we do like a roll, so you use a die to see who goes first, and then your opponent would roll to kind of see who goes, and you can move around your area and kind of see more of it. Now remember, I got a lost soul, so that means I have to put one down and then draw one. And if you're like, oh, I can't really see anything, you can scale right here and make cards as big as small as you want. So I put down a lost soul in my territory and I drew one. And then you could decide based on the roll of the dice who goes first. The higher person gets to choose. And then I'll just lay out the territory. I'm not going to go into like a simulated game. I do want to show you where cards go. So usually you'll have your land of bondage. Your heroes would go up here. Your evil characters go below them. And then your artifacts, usually I turn them to the side. In Lackey, you can only flip upside down. You can't turn counterclockwise. You could turn it over. That means it's deactive. Turn it back over. But you can't turn a card counterclockwise. Oh, maybe you can. Oh, nope. That's what tilt is. I'm sorry. Gonna be honest, I never use that filter. So, I tend to put my artifacts, when I'm playing, I'll have my artifacts flipped horizontally instead of vertically. And then you'll have your fortresses. I like to put my fortresses, if they're good, I like to put them in the same line. And if they're evil fortresses, I like to put them right here. Once again, this card would be flipped vertically or horizontally instead of vertically. You don't have to do that. That's just something I do. And I like to put my artifacts all kind of right in the same spot with my fortresses. We have other card types. That's pretty much your main cards. And then you have what's called the field of battle. And so I could put down my cards, and then I could either attack or choose not to. If I wanted to attack, I could come out, and in Lackey we use it as the middle. Usually what you'll see is the cards in person. You'll have your cards in front of you and your opponent. Now I like to be organized. One, it helps me see what I have out, and two, it's really fair for my opponent to see what I have. Most of the time you'll do your battle in front of you because you're playing in front of your partner. They're on the other side of the table. So you will put out your hero into the field of battle and declare either a rescue attempt or a battle challenge. If there's no lost soul in territory, it'll be a battle challenge. But this guy says you may play a lost soul from a deck or draw one. So I could play a lost soul from their deck, and the battle challenge will then turn into a rescue attempt. And remember, I have David's tent. So if your lone first Samuel hero attacks, I get to draw one. So I'd be able to draw one. On your first turn, if I get to go first, I do not get to draw 3 cards. I draw my 8, and then I don't draw 3 after that. My opponent gets to go second, and they get to draw 3. And originally it was just too much of an advantage for the first player to get to draw 8 and then draw 3. It was just very much an advantage for whoever got to go first. So he said, you know what? New rule. This was years and years ago. You don't get to draw 3 if you get to go first. So that would help the player who gets to go second not be at a huge disadvantage. So if it's my next turn, like I go, and then my opponent goes. Now that it's my turn again, I could draw 3. And then you go back and forth and you go into battle. Like I said, I'm not going to simulate an entire game, but I did want to show the layout. And when you're in Lackey, your opponent's going to have their cards over here, and you're going to have your cards over here, and your field of battle is in the middle. And that's kind of as if you're playing against each other. So that's a breakdown, kind of a high-level overview of the game. I didn't go over everything. I can't do the best explanation, but I did want to get into to show a starter deck. I will have the links if you want to get connected to our Discord. Our Discord is very active. We do have multiple Discords. We have one official Discord, and then a few other for different reasons. Like we have one that's strictly for decks and deck buildings and to talk about decks and strategies. And then we have the Redemption Discord, which is everything. I do video breakdowns on competitive decks for the most part, but I'm going to do more how to become a competitive player. and I'll have other links on there with other people's content as well. We have a lot of great content creators. We also have a podcast. We have an official podcast, and then we have really good uh, resellers of the game. So they have phenomenal websites to buy singles or anything you need card wise. Um, so I'll put all the links in this in the description of the video, and then I'll start doing some more videos to where you can just go to my channel and see, well, what if I want to edit my deck? What if I'm ready to buy cards and start adding to my deck? How do I go about that? So I'll make some more videos for that. This is the first video to where I can kind of give a introduction to Redemption and introduction to Israel's Deliverance, the starter decks, and kind of show the basics. Just wanted to be able to have an outlet for new players. So I hope it helped. If you need help getting connected, or you said, hey, that Lackey program looks pretty cool, where can I find it? Just comment on the video. I'm pretty good about seeing comments, and I'll help you out the best I can. Or join the Discord and hop in there. We'd love to have you. So thank you for watching. I hope this was informative and not too boring. I know it can be difficult to try to teach people without seeing their face and without being in front of them. But I hope it helps some way. I know any new game learning it can be confusing. So I hope it helped. Thank you for watching, and I hope you get connected, and I hope to talk to you one day. Thanks.